vehicle this end of financial year. That's if you take delivery before the 30th of June. With 8 big car brands, MG, Nissan, Kia, Isuzu Ute, Jeep, Ram, Samsung, Peugeot and Pacific Caravans, it's literally a one-stop shop for all your driving needs. Plus, with over 150 quality pre-owned vehicles, Northern Motor Group really does have your next vehicle purchase ready and waiting. Don't wait. Visit www.northernmotorgroup.com.au today. They're in Grimshaw Street, Bundoora, and tell them George sent you. LMCT 6595. You're listening to the State of Our Football Nation on FNR.
Welcome to another edition of the State of Our Football Nation.
You're very quick off the draw there.
No, well, I realised I didn't give you the correct cue in, so I thought I'm not going to...
Pokuah Frimpong as my co-host and pilot each and every week does miraculous things. You've been, I know, very, very excited. Of course, you're being an Arsenal girl. Declan Rice just signed for £105 million. What does that translate in Australian dollars? About
too much
10
money.
million?
Too much money, George.
That's crazy stuff.
It is. But you, much like you know, it's the English player tax. If he was from anywhere else in the world, he wouldn't cost that much amount of money. And that's what I always find it particularly funny when the English media go, why are they spending so much money on this player when they know precisely the reason is the fact that we're getting him from a Premier League team and he is an English player. So that's why it's going to cost that much. If it was from Italy...
My goodness me.
If it was Italy, no more than 60 million.
It was an auction for about 2 minutes, wasn't it, with Man City?
I'm a bit of a conspiracy theorist, George.
You think they just decided to spend a little bit of entree money to get the price pumped
I certainly
up,
do. Because
so they make sure that Arsenal couldn't buy anybody else?
No, I think that Arsenal can buy somebody else, but I also think it's a case of because they made
disruption.
They made one bid, and that one bid cost Arsenal. We've changed the guaranteed money in the add-ons.
You know, you're talking my language. Anything about disruption right now is right in my wheelhouse. And I think you may be right. City may well have gone into the stakes just to see how far Arsenal would stretch. But congratulations. Yeah. Big call. Welcome to State of Our Football Nation. The state of play in Britain is that most of the world is gearing up for a brand new EPL season. The NPL games continue, of course, right across Australia. The Australia Cup is continuing, another round of matches coming up. Some fabulous games were played overseas in Thailand. The under-17s competition, and Australia, I thought, showed some real flair. Yes, didn't quite get the last result they needed. Ran into an exceptional Japanese side. And it just goes to show you they're alert, they're fast, they're pretty clinical, and they know how to play football. So that's probably why we're seeing more and more Asian footballers making their presence felt and seen around the globe. By the way, there's a very big opportunity in Perth in a couple of weeks' time. Was it 3 weeks now? Perth Stadium will see Tottenham against West Ham. It'll be the first, I suppose, game in for, what would you call it, points? Yeah, for points, yeah. Well, it's for something. Bragging rights. Yeah, exactly. But it'll be Ange Postecoglou's first outing in the Spurs colours as the boss. And I also think it's perfect. It's perfect for Ange. It's perfect for Tottenham. Just to build, a bit of just positive news around Tottenham, and just to it looks like fans are more involved, because when he gets to Perth, he's going to receive such a warm, reception. It's going to fill a lot of Tottenham fans with a lot of positivity heading into next season as well. Well, look, we've got a couple of guests we've lined up to try and catch up and talk about some of the action that happened both in Thailand, and of course our second guest is Nick Galatas, who's the head honcho of the AAFC, who are gearing up. Things are getting closer and closer to a National Second Division. Nick will tell us a bit more about that. And he's also one of the people in the lineup at Money and Sport, which is happening on the Gold Coast at Star Casino next week. We'll talk about that also very, very shortly. But let's take a break, an opportunity to provide our sponsors with some very important feedback and a little bit of good news from the Northern Motor Group with the financial year very quickly winding down.
Are you looking to change your destiny in life? Be your own boss? Start your own business? If you are, you need people who understand your needs and are committed to helping you make it happen. At DKP & Co Chartered Accountants, we are more than just accountants. We are business advisors, taxation consultants, and strategists that specialise in setting up businesses. We understand the client and give them the very best customised advice and strategies to achieve their goals. Visit our website dkpco.com.au or give us a call today on 03 9023 9370. Fast, proactive, personal. That's DKP & Co Chartered Accountants.
I've got some great news for Football Nation Radio listeners. Our supportive partner, Northern Motor Group, is offering $250 off any in-stock vehicle this end of financial year. That's if you take delivery before the 30th of June. With 8 big car brands, MG, Nissan, Kia, Isuzu Ute, Jeep, Ram, Samsung, Peugeot and Pacific Caravans, it's literally a one-stop shop for all your driving needs. Plus, with over 150 quality pre-owned vehicles, Northern Motor Group really does have your next vehicle purchase ready and waiting. Don't wait. Visit www.northernmotorgroup.com.au today. They're in Grimshaw Street, Bundoora, and tell them George sent you. LMCT 6595.
Since 1998, Lanco Group has been providing superior civil engineering solutions and advice to developers, local government and service authorities across Australia. Lanco Group is known for delivering sustainable, efficient solutions. By working closely with clients, Lanco Group is able to meet the complex infrastructure requirements for residential, commercial and industrial developments on time, on budget. Find out more at lancogroup.com.au. Lanco Group, your business partner for engineering solutions.
I've got some great news for Football Nation Radio listeners. Our supportive partner, Northern Motor Group, is offering $250 off any in-stock vehicle this end of financial year. That's if you take delivery before the 30th of June. With 8 big car brands, MG, Nissan, Kia, Isuzu Ute, Jeep, Ram, Samsung, Peugeot and Pacific Caravans, it's literally a one-stop shop for all your driving needs. Plus, with over 150 quality pre-owned vehicles, Northern Motor Group really does have your next vehicle purchase ready and waiting. Don't wait. Visit www.northernmotorgroup.com.au today. They're in Grimshaw Street, Bundoora, and tell them George sent you. LMCT 6595.
Are you looking to change your destiny in life? Be your own boss? Start your own business? If you are, you need people who understand your needs and are committed to helping you make it happen. At DKP & Co Chartered Accountants, we are more than just accountants. We are business advisors, taxation consultants and strategists that specialise in setting up businesses. We understand the client and give them the very best customised advice and strategies to achieve their goals. Visit our website dkpco.com.au or give us a call today on 03 9023 9370. Fast, proactive, personal. That's DKP & Co Chartered Accountants.
You're listening to the State of Our Football Nation on FNR. You know, things are hotting up when there is a trophy tour of the Women's World Cup. 21 days to go, and the trophy is doing the rounds. It's in Queensland. It's going to Brisbane Moreton Island, and of course the Sunshine Coast before it wraps up on the Gold Coast, I think on Saturday.
Yep.
So everybody knows very much that the Women's World Cup is happening, and it's happening really soon. And there are two places to be, Australia and New Zealand.
Absolutely.
Are you excited? You're over the moon,
I'm
aren't
over
you?
the moon. And I think that we're doing a lot more in the last few weeks of making the public aware of it with the announcement, doing the stuff on the Sydney Harbour Bridge and things like that.
That was amazing.
I think it's really important. Like, the more of it's on the news, the more people think about it. I might just go to one game and have a look.
I was going to say, timing is always the issue. You don't want to go out too early, because then you're talking about it, about it one's out. This way, we're now in the final straight.
Exactly.
It's not quite as long as the Flemington Straight, but they're coming home with a wet sail. And dare I say it, don't miss it. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for a great number of people. It's the original trophy.
Yeah.
And you can get up close and personal.
And I don't think people realise how big a World Cup is. You know, just if you think the women's football is at a one stage, but World Cups of football, they matter, and people show up and show out.
100%. And I think this is going to be the biggest Women's World Cup thus far in history. So that's sensational.
Absolutely.
Women's sport is coming along in leaps and bounds. You don't have to listen to us. Just look and see how much space the women are getting, and rightly so. They've been held back artificially for quite some time. It was almost like a handicap race for a while. We tied one hand behind your back, then we tied two hands behind your back. But the movement is well and truly underway, and I'm excited to think that our Matildas, given a little slice of luck, because we need it in every sport, don't we? They could do something magical.
They certainly could.
Mind you, you and I will be uncontrollable if they do something magical.
Oh, if the Matildas, just are able to, I would think that what's important is if the Matildas are able to make a quarterfinals.
Yeah.
I think that is a huge win.
Yeah.
And a huge boost for
and
football.
Any further along, that's gravy.
It's a bonus, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that we just don't want to see them out, early in the competition. So I think it hurts. But I think we've got a squad that's capable of doing it. And I've seen recently the England squad have had some people have to be pulled out of the tournament, which if we were to finish second in our group, we would face them if they were to finish top of their group. And that kind of, helps us out a little bit along the way. But obviously you don't want to see players injured at all.
I love it when you're doing all this close study and you've been doing the sums and you've been running the lineups and looking at all the option players. The only other person I know who's been able to do that has been Pablo Bateson, who went off to Thailand, and he said to me, I reckon I can do some reports for FNR if you guys can get off your butt. It took us a little while to get off our butt, but the one thing I can assure you, Pablo did not wait. He jumped, he got into Thailand, and he watched the under-17s launch their campaign, and I'm wondering what he made of it now that he's back home. By the way, Pokuah, if we talk to him, let's do it slowly because he's still recovering. He doesn't know what time zone he's in. Pablo, welcome to FNR. Thanks for making this happen.
Hello.
What time zone are we in
George.
at the moment? Come on, check, tell me.
I'm adjusting, and I had a small dose of melatonin last night, George.
Oh, that will slow you down a little bit. That'll make you very cruisy.
Yeah. It's supposed to help with adjustment, and I got some good expert advice from my local pharmacist, so I trust in that.
Yes, well, as long as it was pure, you'll be all right. You'll be doing very well. Thank you very much. Listen, welcome back. Very, very wonderful to know that there are Australians with great passion and great need to see our young stars in the flesh. How were the conditions over there for you? I know watching the boys play, every half an hour they had them stopping and hydrating and making sure that they had plenty of water in their system. What did you make of the competition and the quality of play?
Well, I think our own performances were a little patchy, and that cost us in the end. However, there are many positives, and we certainly bounced back when we played China, although notwithstanding we had some scares when they made a bit of a comeback late just before the break and then early in the second half, when we really should have had the game well sewn up. But look, the conditions were very trying for both players, support staff and the fans. High humidity, heat. And I have to question, it was diabolical. We got 5 p.m. kickoffs, 4 out of 4 games at 5 p.m. in the summer, the heat and humidity of Thailand. Now, I can't work out how that was planned by the AFC, but that's what we got. And I think it really drained everybody that little bit more. So that was very testing from the first 2 games in Chonburi to then coming back to Bangkok and then playing the quarterfinal at the BG Stadium in Pathum Thani.
I thought the pitches also were a bit of a problem too. There were some heavy pitches which made it very difficult to play that lovely free-flowing football that the boys are capable of playing.
Yeah, certainly in Chonburi, very early on, it was uneven bounce. It was very heavy, and that's a problem with many Thai pitches, which I've seen firsthand in club matches as well over there, because as you know, my partner's Thai, and I've seen a lot of football in Thailand over the last 6 or 7 years. But then when we got to BG Stadium in Pathum Thani for the quarterfinal, that pitch was excellent and a lovely stadium. So I don't think it had an impact there, but certainly in Chonburi and at the big stadium in Bangkok as well, the Raja Manal. I can never get that pronunciation right. I'm not going to try, because the way we pronounce it isn't the way the Thai.
No,
my wife keeps reminding me about that. So yeah, that and when you're backing up every 3 or 4 days, that takes its toll as well. So it's a real challenge for the players and the conditioning staff.
I was just going to say to you, I thought, as you said, the conditions for the quarterfinal, the pitch looks spectacular, and the ball ran, very quickly across the pitch. No worries there at all. But that match 3 days earlier, I won't call it a bog, but it was certainly a very heavy pitch. And I reckon that would have taken something out of the boys, especially Irukunda, who's been explosive all year. You saw him struggling to get to some parts of that ground.
Yeah, and that doesn't suit Nestori's style of play quite clearly. But we saw he came alive in the quarterfinal. He kept us in the game, some brilliant finishing. Look, there were 2 turning points when we got back to 2-1 in the quarterfinal. If we'd got them to extra time, maybe with our conditioning staff and everything, we would have been up for finishing it off. But then, of course, there was a sucker punch, which you kind of come to expect with Japanese national teams. Brilliance. The number 10 for Japan.
Yeah, very good.
Was that Saito, I think? Yeah. Absolutely brilliant. He was the best player on the park for my thinking. And we were outplayed technically, I think, George. That's something we've got to accept. The fluency, the transition, and the poise on the ball right from the back line right through the midfield to up front.
You mentioned something. Sorry, yeah. I was going to say, you mentioned sucker punch. I thought that first goal was the sort of goal that cracks defences and breaks morale. It was basically a cross ball. It bounced over the centre half or the central defender, and our next header was totally off balance, and it played straight into their striker, who just took a moment and put it right where he needed to. And that sort of set us back on our heels, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Deflating, and on the terraces, the silence straight after that. We couldn't quite believe it so early in the game. I think it was naive defending. I don't think we should point the finger at individuals.
No.
There were two, at least first of all, the ball coming across, and then two defenders, just naive defending. And that was a bit of a pattern, I have to say, George, through the tournament. It started against Saudi Arabia with their opening goal. It continued at least one of the goals that China put past us. And then, of course, in that game, the final quarterfinal game. And probably we're a little bit fortunate in the first half against Tajikistan as well to come into the break on even terms.
Now, that's a very good point. Tajikistan came at us very early. We started the first press, and then suddenly it was like this cloud had come over the ground, and Tajikistan went on this series of marauding raids, and our defence just held out. Our keeper did what he needed to do. This is the young man who's just signed with Bayern München. And then we got the goal that gave us the ascendancy, and they went on with that. But you're absolutely right. We were most fortunate in that regard. But what do you put this down to, Pablo? And we're speaking to Pablo Bateson, who's just come back from watching the under-17s in Thailand, and we're getting a bit of a review and a sense of just how difficult the conditions were. And, of course, always on television. Much easier to sit at home in the comfort of our homes in a very wintry Australia and say to ourselves, what's the problem?
Yeah, well, 34 degrees at kickoff time with very high humidity and heavy pitches, except for that final game. That combination, and I know it's the same for all teams, but even so, and these are young lads, 16 and 17. They're not grown men yet.
I was going to say, do we have 2 or 3 15-year-olds in that squad?
I think so, yeah.
That's not a bad effort to have 15-year-olds there.
Yeah, and that's bright for the future because they will then step up, hopefully, a lot of them to the young Socceroos squad and then contracts with clubs. Maybe some will go to Europe. And then, of course, the pathway to the Olaroos for future Olympics. And then hopefully some of them will step up and eventually make it into the senior ranks. It's a long-term project for development of these players. It's a combination of clubs and national teams getting it right and good agents who pick the right clubs for these kids to go to as well. That's a big challenge as well.
You're listening there to Pablo Pokuah?
Yeah, absolutely. And Pablo, I was just going to ask you, speaking about some of those young players who may have opportunities to go abroad and things like that, but obviously Nestor Irukunda got lots of the praise, and he was, obviously scoring, I think, was it 3 or 4 goals during
but double-teamed and triple-teamed at times.
Was doing all those wonderful things. What other players were the standouts? It doesn't obviously have to just be
young Benny.
From Australia, but who were the players that were really standout throughout the tournament?
Well, there was one young lad of Portuguese background, and I actually talked to his mum in the stands, Tiago Quintal. And I thought in that first game against Saudi in the first half, he was one of our best. And Brad made the decision not to start him, and he delayed introducing him in the quarterfinal until very late in the game. His touch, his finesse, tight ball control and so on. He's got some vision. I really like that style of player. It reminds me of some of the attributes of Nick Galatas, that sort of style. And we need these technical players. If we want to match it, at all national, at all levels with, say, Japan, and they're the benchmark in Asia, I believe. We have to produce more technical players, players who are comfortable on the ball, make good decisions, get into the right spaces and so on. And this is something that Japan, the education and the development starts very early. So they've had a head start on us with a long-term strategy and blueprint. Football starts at home as part of that. We have to match them technically. I think we've got the physicality and we've got that Aussie mentality and the physique, but no, it's the technical aspects, I think, that close ball control especially, and the first touch, second touch, and so on. And that's a real challenge, but it's an opportunity if we're open to evolving maybe the national curriculum further. I still think a lot of younger coaches, I'm not talking about in the national setup, are still fixated with physicality. I don't think we've shaken that off completely.
Pablo Bateson is our special guest on FNR. Pablo, my other thought is in an area that we occasionally lack, we don't seem to have young players who will read the play as well as some of the players we saw in the Japanese side. You can see them moving into terrific spots or turning the play at key times to increase the pressure on the defence. We move the ball beautifully, but it's that last pass, or it's that second to last pass, and you see it going astray or being delayed by a fraction or being overplayed, and you sit there and you say, another move broken down, another promising move broken down. Did that rear its ugly head? Because I think young Benny, I thought a young Manatidis, the boy from Adelaide, certainly showed enormous flair and great potential.
Yeah, look, I agree with those comments and observations, George. I think reading the game, look, as I reflect on my father was many things. He was a teacher, a writer, and a football coach. And he instilled that in me from a very young age, and reading the game, and that's reflected in good decision making, also in spontaneity when it's appropriate. And I think in the first half, look, we were completely outplayed. We came back in the second half against Japan, but we can learn from their successes, and I still think. Thinking ahead, that if and when an Asian team wins the men's World Cup, and the women have already done it, I think the Japanese women's team have set the pace. But for the men, it'll be a Japanese team. I don't know when, but I think it'll happen. And this reflects their long-term vision and development from young ages right through, and the way they nurture them and encourage them and bring them right through. So we can aspire for developing this sort of nous, if you like. And I think football starts at home, George, is really important.
Well, and can't argue with anything that you said there. I'm reminded yet again, it's the wanderer in you talking. Are you looking forward? Are you looking forward to a better season? Because you guys made huge inroads this season in the A-League.
Yeah, I am, but I still think it's going to be hard to get back to what we had before. I mean, it was almost a surreal time getting to the final and winning the final of the ACL in 2014. And I was there in that second leg, that momentous second leg in Riyadh, to witness that. But I think, there are positive signs, because the academy at the Wanderers is producing some really good players, and the setup there, and that's becoming almost a benchmark for the league. But I still think I don't like to make predictions. Yes, we're more competitive.
Yep.
But I'm not too sure about the style of play, George.
That's fair enough.
I'm not convinced under Rudin the style of play
holds up.
Yeah, and it's not all about just commitment and hard work. Of course, hard work and fitness and focus is important, but it's getting the right mix.
Correct.
I mean, a lot of people like to think they're coaches from the armchairs, don't we? But
social media has given everyone the opportunity to be a professional coach in their dreams. But it is what it is. Social media does it. It draws the best and the worst out of all of us. And you're right, I've never seen so many specialist coaches giving my club or Pokuah's club, advice every second of every day. And the worst time of the year is right now, in between seasons, when everyone knows who's the right player to bring in, how much money you need to spend. And I'm thinking to myself, what do you know of these people? And more importantly, in the instance of Arsenal and Arteta, he would have a plan. He would have a plan that he's been putting into effect for the last 2 or 3 years to get to where they are now. And here we are on the sidelines. We know everything. But I'm very interested, just before we wrap this up, Pablo, and thank you very much for finding the time and giving us the opportunity to do a bit of a review. Was there much talk about the upcoming Women's World Cup in Australia and New Zealand while you were away?
Oh, most definitely on the terraces, and the excitement really is building. I also talked to a couple of the staff who will be involved in the back room and behind the scenes with the organisation from within supporting the Matildas. It is potentially a once in a lifetime opportunity on home soil. I got my tickets a long time ago.
Of course you did.
And then I'm excited by it. I think the Matildas really do have the chance to win the World Cup. I don't think we should get ahead of ourselves, and I know they'll take it one game at a time. Yep. But on home soil, and we've got momentum, we're settled. We seem to have come to, key players like Ellie Carpenter have come back from that horrendous injury, and there are others on the comeback.
Kaya Simon is in the squad too. Wow.
Yeah.
Pokuah is still, her eyes are rolling. She couldn't believe it.
Yeah, well, she's a legend, and you need that maturity. And the evidence shows, you probably know this, George, that to win a World Cup, you've got to have the right mix of experience with a few veterans and youth as well. That's the evidence of World Cups over probably the last couple of decades. And I think we have got a really exciting mix of the young and the experienced and a few veterans, if you like. I'm excited. I know I'm not a betting person, but I noticed the odds have just been trimmed on the TAB for the Matildas winning the World Cup, which is interesting.
Yeah.
I think we'll make it to at least the quarterfinal, probably the semi-final, and then after that, make your own luck on home soil.
Well, Pokuah has been saying for ages, let's just give them an opportunity to play the game. She thinks it'd be super exciting if we make it to the quarters, and then from there on, it's almost another competition from then on, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It's a bit like getting through those early stages. Yeah,
it's ultimately for the Matildas, if they finish second in their group and then they have to face England, if they beat England, everything from there onwards is, it's just opportunity. And you've got to take it.
Pablo, thank you very, very much. Good luck with your Wanderers. And good luck with the recovery that you've been going through. We hope the melatonin works tonight and gives you an even longer sleep break. But we really appreciate your contribution on the program. Each and every week we talk about the state of the game, and it's getting exciting. And hearing these youngsters making a presence, we saw some lovely young players. Just give us a glimpse of what's to come. But you're absolutely right. We have to look at our play, our style of play, and see if we can get that mix right and those final decisions a little sharper than what we've seen. But again, you remind us that the conditions were seriously difficult over there for all the teams, but especially for our young boys who discovered what international competition is all about.
Yep, certainly a reality check.
Yep.
But they can go a lot further, and with the right support, the right self-belief and focus. So thanks for the opportunity to have the chat, George, and I'll see you at the Women's World Cup, hopefully, and I'm looking forward to Socceroos recommencing World Cup qualification in November as well.
That's right. It's coming. It's absolutely coming. A lot of football. The world game is, as they say, coming at us at 100 miles an hour. Thank you to Pablo. We're going to take a short break. Another guest, Nick Galatas, joining us in just a moment. I've got some great news for Football Nation Radio listeners. Our supportive partner, Northern Motor Group, is offering $250 off any in-stock vehicle this end of financial year. That's if you take delivery before the 30th of June. With 8 big car brands, MG, Nissan, Kia, Isuzu Ute, Jeep, Ram, Samsung, Peugeot and Pacific Caravans, it's literally a one-stop shop for all your driving needs. Plus, with over 150 quality pre-owned vehicles, Northern Motor Group really does have your next vehicle purchase ready and waiting. Don't wait. Visit www.northernmotorgroup.com.au today. They're in Grimshaw Street, Bundoora, and tell them George sent you. LMCT 6595. You're listening to the State of Our Football Nation on FNR.
Hello and welcome back to another edition of State of Our Football Nation. We were just lucky enough to have a really nice conversation with Pablo, and I've just completely phased on his last name. But Bateson, thank you very much. And it was a really enjoyable conversation.
Well, he was back from Thailand where he watched the under-17 competition there, and he gave us an insight about the sharpness and the quality of the Japanese that beat us in that quarter-final game 3-1. He also mentioned that there are some young Australian boys that have got some wonderful skills, but we need a bit more competition, a bit of sharpness, and maybe our coaching staff needs to look at how they put this array of talent together. It's all about putting a team to play a particular style of football, but then you want the children or the young players, whether it be men or women, to take the opportunity, take the bit between their teeth, and express themselves.
Yes, certainly. And
you've been saying it all year in competition.
No,
you want all the teams you're watching to express themselves.
Yeah, I want them to express themselves, and I want a national identity of the way we play football. And I think the clearest indication of that is when you see these under 17, under 15 squads play at international tournaments. Do they look like they have an identity of what the country represents on the football field? And if you don't see it at a younger age, it's really difficult the older these players to get them to play a style of football that works, and
100%.
Harder for us to achieve things. But, we can only get better from here. So.
Speaking of better, some better news coming up regards the National Second Division. And the chair of the AAFC joins us, Nick Galatas. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thanks, George. Thanks.
And I hear that you've scored yourself another entry card. You'll be part of the lineup at Money in Sport on the Gold Coast next week.
Yeah, that's right. Should be fun. Get away from the office a bit to the Gold Coast. Hopefully it won't rain too much.
Now have you seen the lineup?
I have. I don't think I'll make anywhere near the best 11, George. As usual, it'll be a sub.
Yeah, I don't believe that. I think you have an awful lot to say, and more importantly, the timing is right. There's so much going on. Pokuah has been telling me over the last few weeks that she's hearing more and more, discussion about the game. She's seeing it, perpetuated almost everywhere she goes, and she's flying off to Sydney for the Writers' Festival in the next week or two. So. Yep. The word is the action is here. The original World Cup Women's Trophy is currently touring Queensland, and you'll probably see it on the Gold Coast. I think they're going to have it there for a few days.
Yeah, I think so.
When do you arrive, Nick? When do you head up to the Star?
Unfortunately, I haven't given myself a lot of time. I get up there on the Wednesday. So I should have a bit of time on Wednesday, George, and Thursday is the event, so that'll be good. And I don't leave until Friday, and then I'm off to New South Wales. So and I'll see Pokuah there at the Writers' Festival. That should be great as well.
Well, let me tell you, you're right in the middle of it. I'm getting ready to watch Australia play France, the send-off game at Marvel, and we're already told that the attendance record will be broken. We know that the number stands at 36,000 to watch the Matildas play in Australia. We now know that it'll be 40 plus, could well be 50. And then, of course, a week later, I think they're playing Ireland in front of about 91, 92, 93,000. So a lot of records are starting to tumble, Nick, which is very exciting. Let's talk about Money in Sport for just a moment. For those of the people that don't know, Money in Sport has been an annual affair for the better part of the last 8 or 9 years. It was suspended during COVID, which explains why we haven't seen too much of it. Much of the major corporate businesses, was on hold for 2 or 3 years during COVID. But we've got international guests. We've got some of the best speakers who know not only the business of sport, but are representing some of the biggest codes in the world from all over the world. And you'll be right in the middle of it. What will you be talking about, Nick?
Well, can I say, George, obviously football will be the focus and NSD will be the focus, but a bit more than that, I hope, because I'm involved in sport in a slightly wider way than that in my capacity as a lawyer and in sports law. But obviously, my main involvement to date has been in football and the National Second Division. So I'll leave that to what the guys want to discuss. But can I say, in support of what you've just said about Money in Sport, that I went to the inaugural one in Melbourne many years ago.
At the old Telstra Dome, is that right?
Yeah, at the old Telstra Dome. I was there.
Yep.
And it might have been 1 or 2 years before Lou moved it to the Gold Coast, which made it slightly harder for when I was flat out back in those days. And then, as you say, COVID hit. So there's been a gap. So I'm looking forward to going up again. I think it's a great format. It gives people a chance to speak on official panels and also around the trap, so to speak, and exchange some great ideas. And I think these types of events are very, very important for sport in general and football in particular. So I can't wait for it, really.
And it's the networking too, Nick. It's the networking that I think is fantastic. If your business is sport and you're not a participant or you haven't managed to get yourself an entry card, you're missing a golden opportunity.
Absolutely, I think that's right. I think anyone who's got an interest in the game and sport in general should get up there.
And I noticed that Football Australia are going to be right there, front and centre.
Yep, they will. Should be good.
Now, what are we hearing? What's the latest, the state of play regarding the National Second Division? I understand that they're trimming the number of clubs, or is it another selection process that we're all going through that we need to know about?
Well, it's all part of what Football Australia announced a while ago, George, back in February. So this is consistent with the original timetable, more or less.
Yep.
I don't want to, get stuck into days and weeks, but more or less for a start next year. So that's still the plan. So what, as you might remember, back in February when it was announced, the EOI, the expression of interest was announced, all sorts of clubs applied. FA whittled that down by a little bit only, down to 26 applicants about, early May, nearly 2 months ago now, 7 or 8 weeks ago. And the next phase was always going to be this phase that started, which is the request for proposal phase, where FA has invited those clubs who were in its 26 to participate in this next phase, and that's now commenced. So that was commenced about a week ago. What's today? Thursday? Yeah, I've lost track of time, George.
29th today.
Yeah, so about a week ago, the clubs were notified, and that process has commenced. Where they're signing some documents and they're attending to some requirements of FA, so that they can then take part fully in this next phase. FA has appointed a consultant, and to assist FA in this process, so they will assess the applications. I don't know if all 26 applicants will go ahead. I'm expecting they will until anyone says they're not. Mm-hmm. And FA will assess it, and it will go from there. And hopefully we will have a selection process that will pick the best applicants. And also this is the process that, based on the applicants, I think we need a bit of work to do still on the design of what this model will ultimately look like. you would have seen in the papers. That's not yet absolutely settled. And I think logically, FA will take into account the capability and availability of applicant clubs to settle that final model. So that's what it's up to at the moment.
Nick, I was just wondering, with this next phase, is there a number in which FA they're thinking about, this is the amount of clubs that will be sustainable for this to be a viable option, like with the money involved, and also not having too many clubs where the competition just becomes a little bit too muddled, but also not having too little amount of teams? Is there a number that there's kind of worked on?
The Cinderella comp, look, they've mentioned 8 in the past as a minimum, but look, obviously with the number of applicants, there will be more than that in my view. I mean, I don't know, obviously, what it would look like, but the FA have talked, I think publicly, anywhere between 10 to 16.
Yes, correct.
So we're hopeful. I mean, I'm personally hopeful it'll be closer to 16 than 10. 12 to 14, obviously, to have a competition, if you play each other twice, let's say, we know what the numbers are. If you've got 14, it's 26 games. That would be great. 12, 22 games, so that you want enough games for what we all expect will be initially young squads and young players getting goes at playing at this level. And you started out talking under 17s and what Pablo was talking about, and, good young players coming through. So we're hoping for a good comp that might last 22 to 26 weeks. And that's what we're looking at the moment.
It's interesting you talked about the under-17s there, or you mentioned it. Some of that football was very exciting. The Japanese showed us yet again how well versed they are in this modern form of the game. They play it fast. They play it with real flair and poise. That's the thing you see on almost all their faces. They seem to know what they're going to do next. Where some of our players, and admittedly some of our boys who were only 15, you could see they're still finding their feet in international competition. So for me, there's an enormous amount of talent. We've just got to make sure that we don't get too greedy, and we do give them the opportunity to not only to blood that talent, but to allow them to find a comfort zone so they can express themselves, which is that thing that Pokuah keeps reminding me. She gets super excited when she sees players have the confidence to express themselves. And that's what we ask of anyone, don't we? Even in business, you want people, your employers or your employees, to be in that lovely space, that mindset too, that they're there, you're employing them because they're good at their craft, and then you let them do what they're meant to do. Yeah, that to me is always about good business, employing good talent and then delegating the stuff that needs to be delegated and then letting them get on with it. And I'd like to see that in our football too.
And George, what was exciting, and I've seen a bit of it, a few of the games, obviously, like we all are from a distance, and we get to see bits and pieces. As much as we can. I mean, the goal, for example, that we all admire, that's made on all the clips, and the story of Rakunda cracker against China. But what I loved about it, and I think and I say this all the time about such goals, and in particular when it's a young player like the story who scored it, and that is that he actually thought he would. It's not so much that
that's good. That's good.
To put his foot through it and hit the top corner from whatever it was, 30 metres. But I just try to think, what would I have been like at the age of 17, where I thought I could receive a ball in that position and think, I think I'll score this. And it just takes a special sort of, I think, self-awareness, knowledge, confidence, etc., to not just hit it, but to actually think you might. And I think that's what's underrated and underestimated. So to see that was just super exciting. I mean, I think any kid seeing that is going to think, geez, I'd love to play and give myself a chance.
Oh, yeah.
So that's exciting. But George, I just want to say...
Go ahead.
I just want to say the second division, though, it's more, it's everything. It's what you've said about those young players. That's a given. We want to give as many young guys a chance, and women, of course, in the second division, a chance to play, which, we can talk about it all day, and that's a given, as I say. But it's what also you said before at the beginning about Pokuah going around the country and football being spoken about, be it Matildas, be it whatever, the game.
Yep.
And what we're hopefully going to achieve is just by creating another national comp, playing when it's going to be planned at the moment in March, to give us an all-round football discussion in this country, not just A-League, Matildas, A-League women's, National Second Division, hopefully women's, just create that conversation, that continuity of conversation. When if we didn't have the Matildas this year, as we thankfully we do in the World Cup, but you take that out of the equation and there's no Second Division talk, the A-League's in hibernation for 6 months, effectively, or whatever it is. We don't get that continuity of discussion. So hopefully this country will, and the participants that are involved, we keep talking about the 2 million participants, but the participants, the viewers, the competitions, if we grow those and we have that conversation, then you get a momentum of its own. And we won't have to worry about creating it. It will happen. So that's part of what we hope to achieve.
No, you're absolutely right. The genesis is the discussion going on right now. Once the competition gets underway, it's a unique opportunity for each and every club to embark on a journey, and it'll be history. This is something else we need to remember. I can remember, I'm old enough to remember the early days of the Phillips League and how exciting that was. I'm even old enough to remember the Ampol Cup in the original stages, and Pokuah's looking at me and going, Ampol Cup, what are you talking about? But they were super exciting. And this is where things get truly immersive. If you follow them and if they're your team or your club, you can't let it go. That energy seeps into every pore, doesn't it? Can I tell you how excited I am right now? Because there's a young guy called Ange Postecoglou who's reached a level of international renown that Australia is going to be on everyone's lips every day of the next EPL season for only one reason. There's an Australian there making a noise, and half of his staff is going to be Australian.
Mila Jedinak.
Can you imagine how much talk there will be in every element of our media over the next EPL season?
Yeah, no, it's unbelievable.
And you know what? There's that South Melbourne will get a few mentions. Do you think?
Oh, the odd mention here and there, I think.
No. The reason I mention that is because they're going to be one of the clubs pitching for the National Second Division, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
So now suddenly we have this wonderfully woven thread that begins there and runs all the way to the EPL.
Yep. And what there's a lot of things you've touched on there, George, but one of them is that Ange's journey has been one of continuity and incremental achievement, and everyone forgets. If you're looking at when he was here 14, 15 years ago before he got the Brisbane Roar job, having come back from overseas, nobody then would be predicting where he'd be now. And I use him as an example to say to my daughter and others and say, don't look at 30 years from now or 20, just look at it step by step. Look at what you can achieve next.
Correct.
And part of that is, of course, the clubs themselves that we're talking about, the second division clubs that are coming through and applying. They've done the same. They've hung in there. A lot of them, South Melbourne you use as an example, and I obviously know South very well, having been a chairman there for many years. And that club came out of the NSL, finding its way in what was the VPL, then the NPL, and is still there, and is just working a way through the steps, through the process. And that's just how it works. And you get to be available and be ready to take the next opportunity. And that doesn't happen if you're not there and you're not surviving. And I think with the clubs, that's what they've demonstrated. I think one of the stories that will come out of this at the end, George, when it's all done and dusted and we're looking back on it, I want to say two things about it. One is the fact that these clubs that we're now relying on, and I've made this point publicly time and again, have survived a very, very difficult arid, if I can say, period, where they've had a ceiling, they've been told where they are, they've been placed in a box, and nevertheless they're still here. And now we're relying on them. The other thing I want to say in connection with that, and this is the historic part, and I think, again, perhaps it hasn't yet hit people, but they've come together as what we've termed our partner group as part of AAFC. That's a bunch of them. We had 30 odd in our group, but of the 26 applicants that you've seen now, if you include the 3 or 4 South Australian teams as part of the FSA bid, there's about 24 of those clubs, or 25, or give or take, are our members. Nearly all of them are our members. And what they've demonstrated is an ability to cooperate and collaborate to achieve this. Now, I reckon this is a historic first. The game is unfairly maligned with clubs accused of acting in their own interest and not being collaborative and not being supportive of the game. Tell me another time and another set of clubs anywhere who have come together from their position they've been in and stuck together for years through this process to see this through, knowing, this touches on Pokuah's earlier question, knowing that most of them, in fact, at least half of them, aren't going to be in the starting lineup, so to speak. Right? So you've got 26 of them there, 27, 28. You might have a comp of 12 to 14. So say half won't start. And yet here they are cooperating together, working together to design the best possible model for all of them. And a lot of them are going to say, right, we're not going to start, but we'll get promoted into it later. Now that, I think, is exemplary. And a time will come when everyone will look back and understand it. I don't expect them to understand it now because they're not as involved in it as I am, and I can see it. But that's been the most heartening thing. And I think when the time will come when people are going to look back and say, geez, it was those 20 or 30 clubs that got together and pressed this and advocated for it and really made it policy at FA and then are working now to make it happen. When it happens, when it succeeds and they've got a great competition up and going 3-4 years from now, and we've got a unified game, that's when I think people will realise the magnitude of what these clubs have achieved.
And you talk about the unified game because I was going to touch on to this point about, I'm assuming the ultimate goal is to have the National Second Division be successful on its own and show that it's a sustainable model, and then ultimately create a more linked up pyramid with the A-Leagues and with promotion and relegation, because that is the way in which football is ultimately most successful all around the world. And you were talking about these young players, and obviously we're going to see a lot of young players. Is the goal to have young players, but also the right mix of having experienced players, so then the competition is viable and doesn't become
cannibalise itself?
Yeah, it doesn't become just the development league, which is important, but it doesn't have enough competition towards those A-League clubs, if that makes sense.
Well,
interesting thought.
Absolutely. And when I said young players before, I don't for a minute believe, and it's not, again, it won't be me that picks the team, so I don't know what the club in each division will do, right? But I think if you set the right model, the rest will look after itself.
Yeah, good.
Really, we don't need, and I think we had this discussion a while ago when the second division was being contemplated before it was announced, and everybody was looking at what its aims are and its objectives, and everyone spoke then about young players, be it Graham Arnold, our national coach was talking about opportunities to Football Australia, to us, to clubs. But it's not about that many. When let's say you've got 12 to 14 clubs and you've got 20 players per club and you've got, 200 or 300 players. Of course they're not all going to be young, and you don't need them all to be, because we're not going to have that many that need to come through that are champions. I mean, if some are playing in the A-League, obviously, some will be playing overseas. And then if we've got the best of the rest who aren't getting a game somewhere or, develop at different rates, that's enough. You don't need to build a team of, 17-year-olds. This is all about having a commercial, viable competition which fans will go and watch and enjoy, and the quality needs to be decent. And that means, as you said, Pokuah, a mix of players. And there's 25, 28, 30-year-olds, and the young players benefit from them. You need them in the dressing room. You need their experience, their know-how. And it's not about just getting kids playing together, because then they don't develop. So you need those kids, the best of them, with the experienced guys next to them, so to actually test them and help them develop.
The voice of reason, Nick Galatas, the chair of AAFC, getting ready to head off to the Gold Coast to be part of
my card, George, the voice of reason.
to be part of the new Money in Sport sports conference happening at the Star Casino on the Gold Coast. I think it's the 7th of July. Listen, have a wonderful time. Some of us have other commitments that won't allow us to get up there. When this Money in Sport was first announced, Lou reached out to me and said, will you come up and host it? I said, of course I will. And, of course, since then, things have changed. But, mate, I've seen the lineup and I'm super excited. I'm delighted you're getting up there. Please enjoy it and bring back some good news, and we'll get a chance to debrief a little bit later on. But all the very best. Thank you for making yourself available for today. Anytime we can update the FNR audience as to what's happening with the National Second Division, we will do it. And once again, thank you for reminding us about where the stories start and what a fabulous adventure lies around the corner. Let's be patient. let's get it right and let's get it going. Okay?
Thank you both. Enjoy.
All the very best. Nick Galatas on FNR. Pokuah, we started talking about your fabulous Arsenal.
Yep.
Can they, with the added names over the last week or two, and you've added a few,
Yep.
Can you now, understanding too that you're going to be in the European competition, right?
Yes.
Champions League, which wasn't a competition you were a part of last year, correct?
Just Europa, Thursday.
Just Europa, but slightly different focus.
Yeah,
do you think now that you've got the hardware to go along with the style of play to not finish off what you started, because you went beautifully until just the very end? Do you think you've got the key parts now?
I think so, but I'm a little bit nervous because obviously we're getting Declan Rice in and we've got Kai Havertz in for their midfield. But the problem we have right now is that both Granit Xhaka and Thomas Partey are going to leave the club before the start of the season. So now we need to find replacements of the people who would have been on our bench. So I'm nervous, but I am optimistic about heading into next season.
Yeah, and I'm always fascinated when you wear the colours of another EPL club. What am I to make of an Arsenal fan who wears Chelsea colours?
Do you know what it is, George? I only wear shirts of other teams if a Ghanaian player has played in that team.
Oh, of course.
So it's more of a Ghana.
It's you paying homage, homage to the great Ghanaians who've played.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, all right. And in this instance, who are we paying homage to?
Obviously, Michael Essien. I don't know if he played in this specific shirt, but I always think of Michael Essien when I wear the shirt, though.
Now you know more about Pokuah Frimpong than you ever imagined you were going to know. Pokuah, until next week, thank you very much. We trust you've enjoyed it. 2 special guests and 2 different perspectives, but all wrapped around this round ball game that we love so much. You're listening to the State of Our Football Nation on FNR.